Republicans getting some encouraging news 9 months out from the November midterms. The Politico Morning Consult poll shows 39% of registered voters say they would support a Republican candidate for Congress in their district. 38% say they'd support the Democrat. 23% are undecided. One reason for the GOP's slight edge could be that most Republican voters are skeptical of the investigation into Russia's meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Only 30% of GOP voters think the contents of the Nunes memo are mostly true. That memo purported to show the FBI abused its surveillance authority and that the Russia probe is biased. 48% have no opinion or don't know enough about it. My panel is back with me, Evan McMullin, Noelle Nikpour, and Jason Johnson. Jason, let me just ask you how much this matters. We're focused on it. Obviously, a lot of folks in Washington are focused on it. When you get down to districts around the country, how closely are voters paying attention to all the twists and turns of the Mueller investigation,
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. At all. Yes. When I am in Ohio, when I am in Florida, when I am in Georgia, this is not what people are concerned about. And I say this as a political scientist, and I've said this multiple times, David. The generic ballot is kind of garbage, okay, as polling goes. It really, really is. And here's why. At the end of the day, what actually matters is what happens on Election Day. Asking people in a general sense what they think they might possibly vote for with no concern about what the nuances are state by state by state, it's not a particularly good predictive measure. Here's the measure that actually matters. 36 to 4. Democrats have flipped 36 seats in special elections since 2017. The polling may not reflect that now, but that's how people are feeling. And if you're willing to go out and vote for dog catcher in the middle of November because you're that mad at Donald Trump, that is what Republicans and Democrats are concerned about this far. So I don't think Russia's going to matter, and I don't think the generic ballot means that much.
Well, there are plenty of people just shaking their fists at the heavens saying they should care. This is important. Americans need to care about this. Why don't they, as you talk to folks around the country?
You know, a lot of people, they're not pocketbook issues, as we were talking about early. They're, you know, people are getting their kids ready to school. They're thinking about what they're going to do on the weekend. You know, they're talking about the game. You know, they're looking at taxes. They may be concerned, you know, about things that affect them in their household. But they're not thinking about Russia. And there's a couple of reasons why. Yes, they understand about the meddling. They don't like it. They're upset about it. But there's been so much information overload. They haven't kept up with it. And let's, you know, I'm in politics, so I'm every day looking. But the average American has got things to do. They're not glued to the newspapers. And you have a small amount of time. What do you want to focus on when you watch the TV? Oh, I want to hear about, you know, these jobs or Boeing bringing money back or what's going on. You know, when it gets into Russia, you're like, I kind of fade out because we know that they meddled. That we know. We know that, you know, here's the outcome of the election. We know that they've got a potential to do it. We are aware of the ad implications that we saw on Google, on Facebook, on Twitter, and whatnot. But, you know, as far as being angry, I don't put it this way. I've never had a donor say, all right, how does your candidate, where does he stand on Russia? What's going on? They don't ask. They ask me about taxes and so forth.
Evan, there's something fundamental here, though. If I'm going to vote on a pocketbook or a wallet issue in my case, I want that vote to count. I want to know that my vote is going to be counted properly. And when you look at that indictment, I got to imagine there are a lot of people, these unwitting Americans cited in that document, who feel like I was played in this election. Won't that have a profound effect, just the way that people look at our electoral process?
Yes, I think so. And I think this indictment of 13 Russians does start to move the ball forward in helping Americans understand why this is such an important issue. But I think there needs to be more. I think Jason and Noelle are right, and I'm sad to say it, but if you travel around America and in the middle of America, people are not as focused on this as I think they need to be. For understandable reasons, though. This is something that's very new. We haven't faced this kind of challenge in America before at this scale. People are worried about getting their kids to school and through school and making sure bills are paid on time. They expect their leaders to lead and take care of problems like this. But on the Republican side, you have most leaders telling their people this for a while, this is a nothing burger. So they tend to believe that. They see on Fox News that this is nothing. They're being told that it's nothing. But what will change things is if Mueller delivers an indictment of someone in Trump's team that is as detailed as this indictment of 13 Russians, and if he then delivers an impeachment referral to Congress, and if things like that start to move forward, then I think people do start to pay attention to this and realize this is a serious issue, and our republic depends on our defending ourselves against this.
I'm going to ask each of you, we've got about a minute left. Are guns going to be an issue? Is that going to be an issue that resonates with the
Guns are going to
electorate?
be an issue, but one other thing I want to say about this voting and polls and voting integrity that's important. This is not new. We had black box voting. We had books coming out in the mid-2000s talking about voting machines and how they can be hacked, and most Americans ignored it then. And the other thing is this. You have to look at which voters aren't concerned. Minorities, students, African Americans, they know their votes have been suppressed. They know that strange things have happened when they try to vote. So a lot of this is also which constituents feel their votes are protected and which constituents don't feel their votes are protected. So I think all of that plays a role in how seriously people take Russia.
On the issue of suppression, when you've got these rallies being organized about woke voters out of the St. Petersburg chapter, the grassroots effort or whatever.
Yes.
What does that mean for minority voters in particular?
Well, it's funny. I got an article on The Root coming out about this week. At some point, people have to start looking at many of the African Americans who were saying, hey, I want to vote for Jill Stein or don't vote at all. They sound a lot like what the Russian propaganda was supposed to be. And there are going to be some questions in the black community about, look, how much of this was sincere and how much of this might have been paid for by outside forces. The Russians have a long history of trying to influence African American rights movements going back to the 1960s. That's a question we have to look at now as well.
All right, Jason, Noelle, Evan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Before we go to